Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Instead of my usual emotional check-in with everyone about how you are feeling as the Iron Maiden of fascism closes in on us here in America, I think I'm going to go straight into the episode because today is the 16th anniversary of the show, or really a couple days before this, but this is the closest episode to the 16th anniversary, and it's a doozy. Today I am talking to a friend, an incredible joke writer, TV writer, podcaster. That's right, folks. Today I am talking to Elliott Kalan. And if you don't know who Elliott is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from Millburn, New Jersey, Emmy Award-winning TV and comic writer and podcaster, Elliott Kalan started as a PA at The Daily Show in 2003 and eventually worked his way up to head writer. In addition to The Daily Show, he's written for the Academy Awards, MST3K, Netflix's upcoming Ghostbusters cartoon, and many other shows. As a comic writer, he's written Spider-Man and the X-Men, Harley Quinn, and his own Maniac of New York. And as a podcaster, Elliott has been one of the three hosts of the wonderful Flophouse, which has been running since 2007. This is just a small sampling of Elliott's CV, and the latest addition is his new book, Joke Farming: How to Write Comedy and Other Nonsense, which was just published by University of Chicago Press at the end of last year. And folks, you gotta read it! By law, the only good law that just passed was you have to read Elliott's book. Every other law is basically like, hey, you have to give your entire pension fund to a decrepit billionaire that lives on Shelter Island. Anyway, I think last week's episode, which was Jen Bender from one of my favorite new bands, Cusp, that was the last of what I'm calling my grief episodes. 2025, I think I mentioned this episode, but 2025 was pretty much marked by me running a hospice for our cat Squee. And so for a good part of the year, I was basically running on no sleep and just pure anxiety. And I think Elliott, we talked towards the end of last year, I think this was my first episode in a while where I may have gotten at the very least 5 hours sleep. Maybe not a full night. I'm not going to go that far. But I think this was the first episode in a while where I was operating at, let's say, 80%. Last year, Naomi and I had a blast on Elliott's other podcast, Clueless. And I saw he was promoting his book, and I thought, I should have him back on the show. Elliott was on episode 8 of Beginnings. I first started listening to the Flophouse in 2009. I was working this terrible job for this real estate company in Midtown. And the one thing that was nice was they let me listen to podcasts. And that's when I discovered Flophouse. And Elliott was a writer on The Daily Show at the time. So this show, by the way, back in those early days, was hosted by my writing partner Mark and myself. We had just moved to New York, and we were baffled by how two people with no connections to the entertainment industry start to have careers in entertainment. So we started the show to ask about other people's journeys. And the answer, by the way, is it's not difficult to figure out. It's work hard, or the other lessons. Don't be an asshole. Don't give up. Network non-cynically. I guess you can be a cynical networker if you are also a psychopath or are good at being slimily charismatic. But anyway, and what is the other lesson? Oh yeah, get lucky. Have a stroke of luck. And we figured that out by like episode 20, which is why we pivoted to how does someone become creative in the first place? And then Mark said, I don't want to even be doing this. And we stopped writing together, and I think he has a nice life. Anyway, not only was Elliott on episode 8, but he was also the first person with a real job in entertainment to be nice to me and to offer to answer my questions and kind of just give me the lay of the land. And so I thought it would be very appropriate for all these reasons to have Elliott back and to have a real in-depth talk with him. Of course, one of the dangers of talking to one of your friends on your interview podcast is that you enjoy talking to them. So you're willing to go on tangents, which were very fascinating. We talk about the state of the business now and how that looped back to the original desire to create in the first place. We talk about the idea of legacy. But we didn't do the full amateur Freudian analysis. So I'll just have to have Elliott back again soon. You hear that, Elliott? All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode even a fraction as much as I enjoyed talking to Elliott. But first, coming up on the show, got a lot of indie rock experimental music folks coming up. Juliana Barwick, Mary Lattimore, 2 great talks. The Lisas from Cub. Woo! We getting real deep about the nature of ambition. That was a real good talk, so stay tuned for those. But for now, here's the 16th anniversary of Beginnings with Elliott Kalan. I mean, that's why I do this in a certain sense, is because I'm doing something that I haven't seen in the world. Like, Naomi will hear me laughing from another room, and she'll come in and she'll be like, "Oh, you're writing a script." Like, I'm like, "Yeah, I wrote a joke that made me laugh. Why else would I write it? I'm not,
well,
you know."
In my new book, Joke Farming, I talk about how, like, if you don't think it's funny, why bother writing it? You know, it's okay to think your own joke is funny, because if you're don't think it's funny, then what are you doing? You know, why would you do it? So, yeah.
Well, I mean,
unless they're paying you a lot of money to write something really unfunny,
or paying you a small amount of money and contributing to your healthcare fund. And
yes, yeah.
You're just like, I guess so. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Moving out here that I've noticed is just like, I'm doing this stuff because I genuinely enjoy it, and I'm trying to create things that I want to see in the world. A lot of people are here just because it's like, well, it's a fun way to make money. And I'm just like, that's your, I mean, they don't say it like that.
They don't say it,
like,
but you can tell. When you look in their eyes, you can see the mercenary coldness in their pupils, yeah.
Yeah, and then you see I mean, you can't always, obviously, you know this hosting Flophouse, but like, the layers and layers of people that can fuck a project up,
yes, are
immense. So maybe the person is actually a good writer or director or whatever, and it's just that there's so much other stuff that
I think that's one of the big lessons I picked up from working in this field, as opposed to just being a viewer of it, is it's like, oh, even bad stuff is usually made by talented people, and like, it's not their fault, or that a talented person is capable of making a bad thing through other circumstances, you know? Like, and one of the nice things about being a professional, I assume you feel this too, is that there's no pressure felt by anyone to see any of the work that anyone you know has made. When, like, I'm working on a show, I don't expect my friends to watch it. Like, my friends don't expect me to have seen the things they're doing. And there's something really nice about that. But it's like, I will say, you know what? I think talented people can make bad stuff, but also a bad thing often has talented people behind it. Like, a bad TV show often has talented people working at some level on it. And maybe there's...
Okay, well, there's I don't
know, it's always the person
some level,
the shots,
there's the caveat.
You know? Yeah.
Yes, at some level. But there are and maybe it is just the enshittification of existence. Maybe it is just the asset managers and the private equity freaks that have gotten into this, that have changed it in a way. And you've been doing this longer than I have, so maybe you have seen the change yourself. But the way in which it feels like it's transformed from something that people do because they have a deep creative desire and a deep love of television, or a deep love of film, or a deep love of comics, because that's also kind of like transformed, right? To something that is done because it juices the stock price. And then therefore it's opened up a floodgate of people who are just like, yeah, sure, you'll pay me $100,000 to $200,000, whatever. Yeah, sure, I'll do it.
So I think so I would disagree with some of your premise there. I think that it is foolish to look back on any of those creative fields and think that the people at the top of them were ever in it for creative reasons. It was always the people making this stuff. The studio heads of the golden age of cinema, when they were making the greatest movies that America ever made, those studio heads were often Philistines, just in it for money.
Don't tell me Jack Warner, please. Do not tell me Jack Warner.
I don't.
He's one of my.
I hate to break it to you this way.
Wall of posters of Jack Warner.
I know you have those. I can see behind you the poster of Jack Warner, the poster of Louis B. Mayer, the poster of Harry Cohn. There's always been a layer of people who are in it just for money. But what I think has changed is and comic books is still, if you're making comic books, it's only because you love it, because it pays so terribly. That it's only because you have a love for that medium or the characters. I think the difference is that there's no longer a feeling of, well, let's try stuff and maybe people will watch it. There was always a sense of like, what's hot right now? Let's do that. But there was such a massive need for film in the 30s, 40s until television. Mm-hmm. And then there was such a massive need, even when there were only 3 networks, to produce enough stuff for people to watch. And the companies that were doing those things were not in the business of running each other out of business. Like ABC wanted to be the top network. It didn't want to run CBS out of business. Fox wanted to be the top studio. It didn't want to run Universal out of business, or MGM. MGM was the top studio, but it was not interested in being so successful that the other studios could not make money and had to die. Whereas now we are in this, the thing that's different now is that we're in this world where the companies that are buying up stuff and then distributing it, they're not really making things, but they're producing things in the way of, we're going to give people money to make something and then we'll distribute it, are in the business of trying to put the others out of business. And that's bad for everybody. And if you look, my dream has always been, because I came into television, I think right after the golden boom time ended, when it's like the last Friends writer got their overall deal for $2 million. And then I stepped through the door, and it was during the time when the quality of a lot of television writing was going up, was going very way up. And if you were working at late night, it was certainly a boom time, which I was at the time. But there was less and less with each year, the feeling of like, you know what? All I have to do is work regularly and I will be really well off. Whereas my dream, I used to talk to my writing partner, Brock Mahan, about this. My former writing partner, still friend. We would be like, imagine in the 1970s, you could get rich writing TV and it didn't even have to be good. Like, you could write crap and you'd have a house with a pool. Like, this is amazing. And like, you just sit out by the pool and write whatever, and I think that was we were looking at it through rose-colored glasses, and it's rich for me to say that as a television writer with a house with a pool, we're like I'm living that dream, but it feels like, there was a feeling back then of everyone was kind of like, this is a really fun business to be in. Like, we're doing stuff, we're making money, we're taking advantage of each other, we're mean to each other, like we're grinding creative people into dust, but we pay them a lot, to like, we're crushing people's creative dreams, but they get paid a lot of money. Whereas now it's like, we're crushing people's creative dreams and we don't have to pay them a lot of money. And we're all afraid constantly that we're going to lose our jobs at any moment. And somehow 10 people are making a ton of money and everybody else is scraping by and afraid all the time. Isn't this amazing? Aren't you glad we threw away the old way of doing things for this new way of doing things? And that's what I get mad about, is I'm like, television was a real profitable business model for like half a century. And then it felt like the entire industry was like, what would be even better is if no one made any money. Even the company that had all the money somehow wasn't making any money. And, I think that's the difference of it, is there used to be a sort of ecosystem of networks and production companies, things like that. And we're now approaching, the later stages of consolidation. Did you ever read the book The Master Switch by Tim Wu? This is I'm going to be going on and on. This is an older book from a while ago, but it really changed the way I thought about the way companies work in the technology businesses, but elsewhere also, especially communication. And then he talks about this cycle where you see it with telegraph, telephone, radio, film. A new piece of technology is introduced for communication. it's the Wild West. There's all these small-time operators who are popping up everywhere. There's patchwork audiences here and there. And then over time, a handful of them, like amoebas, like in the moment in the movie Akira, where Kai says to Kaneda about like, an amoeba doesn't love or anything. It just absorbs everything around it. And Kaneda goes, are you saying Tetsuo has that kind of power? Anyway, so it's like that. A handful
By the
of
way, Elliot,
it's Kaori who says it. It's, I think, it's Kai who says it. I can't remember who says it, which of the ladies in it. But
the amount of times that I use the end of Akira as a metaphor for late stage capitalism.
It's basically just this bloated, grotesque thing absorbing everything around it and not enjoying the experience. It's in pain. It doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And so
everyone's miserable.
Yes. And so like a handful of smaller operators absorb the ones around them. They become bigger, and they become bigger until there's fewer and fewer, until eventually there's one. And telephone, that was AT&T. And in other things, it was other things. I don't remember. And then and eventually there's one or maybe a small handful of companies. For television, it would be when ABC and NBC and CBS had like solidified and eaten up all the affiliates. And so they were the 3 national networks. And they kind of become a monopoly. And then a new piece of technology comes along and topples that monopoly. And suddenly it's the Wild West again. And everyone's scrambling. And then it consolidates again. And when streaming came in, that's exactly what we saw, is it kind of toppled the old cable and network way of doing things. And suddenly you had all these little streaming companies where it's like, you really think that like half of these are going to survive? No, they're going to get crushed. And now we're at the point where it's consolidating. And then eventually, I guess when they can beam stories into our brains, from a satellite in space, it'll topple Netflix, and then it'll be the Wild West.
That humanity will be around long enough for that technology to develop.
You never know. You never know what could happen with us. We've been through a lot of bad stuff. We'll be through more.
Well, maybe. I was talking about this on an episode maybe a month or two ago, that the neoliberal turn, the investor revolution in the 70s, where the kind of like the Jack Warners who like were monsters, and I didn't know that before you said it, so I'm going to have to reevaluate.
I know you thought he was great. Yeah,
but the old studio heads who were every film noir about Hollywood has one of these freaks as the big bad, right? Who's murdering everyone or, killing sex workers or whatever. They at least wanted the game to continue. All the old money blue blood freaks wanted the game to continue. And then when the investor revolution...
you wouldn't call those studio heads old money blue blood freaks. They were all Jewish immigrants that scrambled their way to the tops,
Compared with like all the tech monsters now, I'm including them in with those.
They would love that. There is nothing that would make Jack Warner and those guys happier, Louis B. Mayer happier, than for you to know that it would be slightly not as exciting to them as we are 2 Jews talking about it. They would like 2 Gentiles to say it. Sure. But for someone to call them the blue blood old money types, they would be like, we made it. Yes, we came to this country and we made it.
They made it. They got to be monsters. They got to be monsters. Rich monsters.
And here's the thing. Have you ever read the book Picture by Lillian Ross?
No.
It's great. It's a book all about the making of the Red Badge of Courage. She was on the set when John Huston was making Red Badge of Courage, and then she followed along with the producer of the movie as John Huston lost interest and left. And the producer had to finish this movie. And there's a scene where she meets with Louis B. Mayer, and he's like, why would you make a movie like this that makes people unhappy? It says bad things about America. You want to make a movie? Make a movie about moms, about American moms. Make it for the mothers. And he's giving this histrionic, this is the kind of movie I want to make. Movies that make people feel good, and it is in the book. It's portrayed as what a Philistine. He doesn't realize this work of art has been created with his money, and all he wants is this crassest mom apple pie stuff. And I remember, and that's the way it's presented. And I remember reading it, and I was like, at least the guy cares what kind of movies he makes.
That's the thing, right?
At least he gives a shit about the content of the thing that he's making. Yeah.
Yeah. I've pieced a lot of this together over the last 10 years, but essentially, right, there's a bunch of changes, legal changes in the way you can do stock buybacks. That comes in the 70s.
Well, in the movie Stock by Back to the Future. Yeah.
Yeah. when they went when Doc Brown went public and
yeah. They had to get rid of the Libyans because the Libyans was going to hurt their IPO. Yeah.
They initiate all these kind of fiscal changes in the way corporations work, and that ushered in the whole kind of like Michael Douglas Wall Street type.
Yeah.
And all they care about was making money. And then that became impossible. Like the reason why the tech freaks are into Hollywood is because they, for a while, were getting free money from the government. After the crash in 2008, there was the zero interest ZIRP, whatever that is, zero interest something program.
Yeah. It's a bunch of loans where they could get free money, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Like Matthew Lesko said, you get free money from the government. These are the plans that you apply to. Tell them you're growing soybeans in your bathtub. You get free money,
And they found a new place to exploit labor, us, which is why it's gotten worse and the grind has gotten more painful.
I would say it's inevitable that companies with money want to get into Hollywood because it is glamorous. And the same thing happened in the 70s with like Charlie Bloodhorn and Gulf and Western buying Paramount. And when Warner Brothers was owned by, I think it was a company that owned parking garages all over the country, like, because you can make a lot of money doing things that no one cares about and are not exciting. But then you can use that money to buy a Hollywood studio, and then suddenly you're hanging out with movie stars, and suddenly you're really, it's like David Zaslav, I feel like, is the version of that now, where it's like, he's a lawyer for a cable company.
If he's going to buy something of mine, yeah, awesome.
But no, he's great. But with tech guys, they also have, it's another way to make money. And I think they see an industry that is riddled with inefficiencies, and it really bothers them because it doesn't operate in the way that they would like it to operate, and which is a way where lots of money gets spent on things that don't happen, but it's not the things that they like that don't happen, like space colonies. Mm-hmm. But also, if anything, I feel like the tech billionaires are not just interested in making money. They're interested in controlling people's lives because they have a sense of their God, philosopher, Messiah boys who even though they seem to have little to no understanding of human emotion or human interactions or how society functions, they do have a lot of money, and people tell them they're brilliant, so they decide that they need to buy that. And
I used to work
media is
for
a good
one.
way to get out the messages they like, which is robots are great, money is great, that human emotions are bad, that kind of stuff. That it's the only worth of a thing is that you can make a lot of money. Like you watch older movies, and there are so many movies about people who don't have money, and you watch movies now, and everybody has the kinds of jobs where you can have a really nice house and really nice clothes, and it makes it really sad. It's the same in TV too. Every now and then there's like a blue collar TV show, and people go, "This is it. Blue collar TV is back," and then that goes away.
It's never. They never ever live in. I mean, I grew up in a pretty, I would say I was middle class for sure, but like all my friends were anywhere between working class and upper middle class, let's say.
Okay.
And I would say none of my blue collar working class friends had households like the blue collar working class households on TV.
No, well, it's like, this is not a blue collar show at all, but I remember watching when I stopped watching Modern Family there was one season when I think there were 2 or 3 different episodes where characters had car accidents, and the rest of the season was not about what is this character going to do now that their car is in the shop and they can't get around. Right. The next episode, they would just have another car, and I was like, I can't sympathize with these characters who can just shrug off their car getting wrecked. Like throw it away like a used tissue and then just pull another one out of the box.
This is the thing. I want to get off this topic in a second, but
yeah, because it's not interesting.
I think it's interesting in the sense of like we're still doing.
We're not going to solve it.
We're still pursuing it. But I think the thing with the why. Okay, so people who bought studios in the 70s, and didn't they all eventually leave or get disciplined? Of course. Yeah, right.
Because they realized that unless you put, and I think this is what the bigger companies are learning now too, like Amazon, unless you put all of your effort into it, you will not make money doing it, really. Like, right. It is not a business that you can be an absentee landlord for. You've got to really be engaged in. It's like I mean, like on a much smaller scale, comic books, I feel like is the same way, where it's like, if you're going to make any money in comic books, you got to be throwing all your effort into it. Like you can't do it as a side hustle. And I think they're going to learn. I think that's what Amazon learned is they were like, we'll just buy up the most famous stuff and make TV and movies of it. And then it's like, oh no, you got to put a lot of work into it. Like Amazon owns James Bond right now. And I don't know what they're going to do with it. Are they going to have enough energy or interest in doing anything with it? Who cares? But also, there was someone online was talking about I think it was Jamel Bowie on Blue Sky was saying something about like what they should do with James Bond, and I was like, and I responded to him, and I was like, or how about this? We don't make any more new James Bond stuff, and we just do something new. And it was, and I like didn't stick around to see what the response to that would be.
What do you mean? It's a classic formula, and so every film is so exciting. I watch it and I'm not bored within the first 10 minutes. What do you mean? Stop making James Bond films.
You're right. That was crazy of me. I shouldn't even bring up the idea.
This racist CIA-esque agent who goes into other countries. It's always fun. Sorry, not to Dennis Miller this. Go off on a rant. But the thing that I always find funny is when in any of those kind of films, the bad guy is always saying like something that actually you want to see in the world. Like they're always and James Bond is always like
not always. I'm fighting. Half the time it's like then we'll put poison gas in everybody's
Yeah, that's a positive
bathrooms.
thing. You don't want to see poison gas everywhere? You want to see poison gas in the water supply?
Well, it reminds me of in the first Black Panther movie where Killmonger is like, we're going to take things back and we'll get our revenge and then we'll kill their children. And I was like, all right, they threw that in because it was so clear that he had a point. They had to make him the bad guy. Well, you went too far, sir. I may agree with your principles, but not with your methods, sir. They could do that kind of thing, you know.
But the thing is, the tech guys, right?
Yeah.
That own
before we get off the subject,
everything now. This point in history, they no longer have to make money. They just have to juice the stock price. Because as far as I know, Netflix has never made a real profit. And it may have changed in the last couple years.
I think they might have. I think eventually they
might have eventually. Yeah. But in the same way, Uber has never really made a profit. In the same way that like what they do is they go in now, they smash up the industry. They smash up like, hey, did you notice how we're not getting paid the same residuals for streaming stuff that we get paid for network stuff? Like they
Are you asking me if I've noticed that?
No,
yes, I very much have.
It's rhetorical. We're not. We are absolutely not getting paid.
I've noticed it. Yeah.
The same residuals. They find a labor loophole to exploit, and the stock price goes up. And that's the stage of capitalism we're in right now, where that's the important indicator, because the rate of profit, the 3% that capitalism's supposed to give everyone, ran out of juice after 2008 and after the ZERP program ended.
Well, but they decided that wasn't enough anyway. That stable profits are not enough. You need to constantly have massive growth. But here's the exciting thing: we're past that stage. We're now at the stage where the economy is propped up by a small group of tech companies trading money between themselves and acting as if it becomes new money each time they hand it to each other. This is an exciting new area, which is entering close to like the only thing I can really compare it to. And I'm not an economic historian. I'm just a small town farmer. Look, I'm no big city lawyer. For the listener,
Elliott held up a thing of wheat to stick in his teeth.
Yeah, but I held it like a cigarette, so I didn't really get the right image, you know. And I went and blew a fake puff of smoke, but so it just
wheat went everywhere.
So it looked a little bit like a decadent long cigarette holder, like I'm at the Kit Kat Club, you know, in Weimar, Germany. But the
hold on. Imagine just a hayseed. So like it's one of those like Casablanca or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a hayseed with a thing of wheat and like a straw hat walking in. Okay, that's it. Anyway,
I would love it. I would love that. Yeah, you call it Cattle Blanca. He's a cattle farmer. he's in Casablanca. Yeah, I'm looking for this letter of transit. You know, where was I? Oh, it's the only thing I can really compare it to that I know of in my poor knowledge is the early days of capitalism, when it's coming out of feudalism, where it's like, well, everything is just moving gold and rubies around from one place to another. You know, except it's not even real stuff like that. Or I remember once years ago, I got a tour of the Federal Reserve gold deposit in Manhattan. This is where the Federal Reserve holds not really America's gold, but like the gold of other nations that it is storing, And
you went on that tour so you could work out a heist.
Exactly. I quickly found that it would be very difficult, and that it was more interesting to take the tour than to plan the heist. And they have a scale there that can measure. It's so sensitive that it can measure a dollar bill. If you put it on it, it will measure very accurately how much it weighs. And they're like, yeah, the scale's 100 years old. There's one guy who knows how to fix it. He's an old man who lives in Florida. A couple times a year, he comes up and maintains it. When he dies, we don't know what we're going to do. And I felt like that's a lot of our system.
Hold on. We don't know what we're going to do. There's no contingency. They're like, we're just relying on this 80-year-old man who lives in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. Well, eventually I guess they'll get a new scale. But they would say, they were like, so these lockers all belong to different countries. And if a country sells gold from one to the other, we just take gold out of one locker and then put it in another locker. And at some point, if they sell it back, we just take that gold out and we put it back in the original locker. And it's like, the gold never goes near those countries. It never actually changes hands, just moved from one room to the next. And I was like, yeah, I guess that says everything. Like it's all just kind of like a make-believe game. But the coolest thing was the metal shoe covers that the workers there have to wear when they're carrying the gold, because gold is very heavy. And if you drop it on your toes, you will break your toes. So they strap these things to their shoes that look like just the toe part of a knight's, boot, from a suit of armor. And I was like, that's amazing. I love that they had to invent that. And they only invented it because enough people drop gold on their toes.
Yeah. All right. So, okay.
So that's my beginnings. That's how I got where I am today. And
well, this is the thing. I mean, we've spent 20 some odd minutes talking about how onerous it has gotten. And yet both of us still, and not just because it does pay the mortgage and it pays for kids' school and
my
it
children's
pays
school,
for
their food, their clothes. I just bought a data DVD full of Firesign Theater radio programs, and that was certainly paid for with the $30 that I made at a job.
$18.99. Yeah. So it pays for the vet visits that I went on almost every week this year. It pays for yeah. So it's not just that. It is also, I think, that the desire still burns in both of us. So the question I always look at the show is, well, where did that desire form? And I was trying to think. I looked at Milburn. I was trying to figure out where
you're like, what do I and Anne Hathaway and Belva Plain all have in common? Interesting. Yeah.
That's where I started. And but I always start with geography. That's not always the place. But I think about the suburban stuff. I try to think about especially if I know the guest or I can look up where
we've known each other for many years, I would say at this point, yes. A number of years. So,
and I'm kind of curious, because this is the real question, which is, well, plenty of people had the childhoods we had.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And
so then what was
East Coast kind of suburban Jewish? Yeah. 80s and 90s childhood. Yeah.
How Jewish? Did you go to temple every week? What was going on?
No, we just went on the high holidays. We went on Rosh Hashanah. We went on we went sometimes on Kol Nidre, sometimes on Yom Kippur. We went on Purim sometimes, but I was bar mitzvahed, but it was not, we were not a particularly religious family. And I remember when I was a kid, something that always struck me was when I was a kid, I mentioned something about God to my dad's mother, my grandma Jerry, and she goes, let me tell you about God. When they take a spaceship up and they take a picture and they bring it down, then I'll believe in God. And I was so gobsmacked by that. I think it was probably about 8. And when she's like, when they take a picture of God, then I'll believe in him. And I once said, when my younger brother was bar mitzvah, and he felt very comfortable on the bima, he was just he owned the stage, and I said to my other grandmother, my mother's mother, my grandma Barbara, I was like, oh, he's really good. Maybe he'll be a rabbi. And she goes, God forbid. So that was, this was not a, we're very aware of being Jewish, but it was not a religiously Jewish household, And as it is right now, my wife is Jewish, but I feel like, and I think she is more culturally Jewish than I am in some ways, but I think I am more spiritually Jewish than she is. And there's a real divide in my family between those of us who believe in God, which is me and my younger son, and those who don't, which is my wife and my older son. And my version of God is just one that I think I share with nobody. So it's Judaism is just kind of like a useful framework for me for that. But it's just very funny because like the word God will come up and my older son will be like, there is none. And my younger son will be like, yes, there is. And my older son is the one who's in Hebrew school right now, and he's really not enjoying it.
Yeah. Oh, I hate it.
But nobody likes it.
Religious school.
That's what I said to my mom.
Boring.
I was like, oh, my older son, he's not. I mean, I used his name for her, but I don't always use his name on the podcast. I was like, oh, he really doesn't like Hebrew school. And she's like, nobody does. She's like, that's the point of it. She's like, did you? And I'm like, no, I hated it. She's like, yeah, everybody does. But,
I got kicked out. Like at some point, I got kicked out, once or twice a month because I would just goof around.
Oh, I got kicked out of the class I was in. They had to put me in another class because the teacher refused to teach me for exactly that reason. And the class I got put in was so much better than the one I had been in. I was like, this is great. I should have gotten kicked out earlier. Like, why didn't they put me in this class to start with?
See, this is the thing. For me, there was only one class per grade.
Oh, okay.
So if you got kicked out, what I had to do was go write an essay on whatever the closest holiday was. There was no putting me in a different class. So there were enough. I guess you grew up like pretty close to New York. So I guess there is
yes. It was. I think it was. I took it for granted how many Jewish kids were in my school. So like when it was bar mitzvah time, it was every weekend you were going to a bar mitzvah because there was. Yeah, it was just we were. I grew up. It was like a 30-minute train ride outside of New York. I used to go in and out of New York all the time on my own once I was a teenager. And the
going to CBGBs.
I just go to CBGBs and I just see what I'm trying to think what bands would even have been playing at the time because it wasn't the heyday of CBGB's punk was over by then.
Yeah.
But actually the thing that this is a regret of mine. So I used to go where I would go. I'd go to MoMA a lot and see what movies were playing at MoMA. But I didn't get involved in I really loved comedy ever since I was a kid, but I didn't get involved in it. And I was reading or listening to an interview with Zach Woods. And he was talking about how he lived in Pennsylvania and he would take the train into New York and go to UCB at night. And then late at night, he'd come back and go to school the next day. And I was listening to this or reading it, I remember. And I was like, I lived closer to New York than he did. I knew UCB existed. Why wasn't I doing this?
Yeah.
And I just didn't. I was just too lazy a kid. I didn't think about that.
That was the thing. But that's what really beckoned me was the art scene in New York in the 80s and 90s. I mean, that was dead by the time I got there. But like that kind of like Hal Hartley was really the kind of like I wanted that. And it was just, I wanted Stella and the State and David Cross and Eugene Merman hosting shows.
And I don't know if you felt like I did where that was similar to the kind of stuff I wanted. I mean, I also wanted like the Algonquin Round Table, which hadn't existed for,
sure.
50 years,
right.
But I was so enamored of the stuff before that I think it took me a while to recognize the scene that was existing there that I eventually became a minor part of that. And it's like, oh, if I had been more aware of this as like, instead of wishing I had been part of that scene, recognizing that there is a scene and I can be a part of it. And then I think I could have done it sooner. I'm a successful professional who his life is fine, for all the complaining they do about it. But I'm always constantly being like, this is what I should have done. This is the thing I would have done that would have made it better. When in all reality, who knows?
This is the thing. I don't just because if let's say, the thing I think about it, like I was a philosophy professor. I went to grad school. Yeah.
I've listened to this podcast. I know your history.
Yeah, okay. So that like, I kind of like, if I had gone right out of college to New York, that is the scene I would have been part of. I would have, if I had gone to New York, I would have been part of the Manzukis Shear class, right? As opposed to coming there like a decade later.
Mm-hmm. Well, because when did you come to New York? I don't remember.
2008. I came to New York with the promise of I left right before my dissertation. And I went with the promise of a job at some Wall Street, like just like doing due diligence on like hedge fund managers for people who were going to invest. 2 weeks later, the financial crash happened. And
it's not a great time to do that. I don't know why I thought you were in New York earlier than that. Because I had been there. I went to New York for college. So I moved there in 1999 when I was 17. and went to NYU and was at NYU for the next 3.5 years. I didn't drop out. I graduated early. Don't worry, everybody. Stay in school. Get your degree. And
or you know what? Don't. It's 2020.
Or don't,
it's
I guess.
2026.
Yeah. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be 2026. Yeah. I mean, go to wilderness survival school, learn how to survive without electricity, how to make your own food and clothes. I didn't learn any of that. And then, so I was a part of that. I was around in that kind of world more like, but I wasn't, my resistance to taking UCB improv classes really made it harder for me to get into. So I took a sketch comedy writing class that Ian Roberts taught there, and it was amazing. He was a great sketch teacher.
He's amazing.
I mean, he's an amazing comedy writer and performer. And I used to go to UCB every Sunday night when I was in college. I'd wait online to get my free ticket to go to the 9:30 Ass Cat show, and I'd go to other shows there. But there was something about paying to take the classes there that I just was resistant to, and instead I had attached myself to a different, much smaller comedy scene that was involving a different theater. But at that point I was already a production assistant at The Daily Show, I think. So like and I would go see people's shows, and it'll be like a 60-seat theater, and they would have a packed house. All their friends and family were there, and they'd be putting on a sketch show and getting big laughs. And I'd be sitting in the audience being like, this is what I should be doing. Like, but I don't have time to do it because I'm too busy working at The Daily Show all day. Like, I was getting mad that like my television job was getting in the way of me doing these 60-seat, black box theater sketch shows. But that's just me having a grass is always greener type thing.
Well, hold on. But there is something there. There is, I think here's maybe a piece of the puzzle. When you're a PA on a TV show, I mean, you're like the lowest person on the totem pole.
You are at that show, you're the second lowest because they're college interns. So I was that. That's what I started as a college intern.
Right.
But I will say at that time, that show, it's a real family atmosphere. And especially when I was there, and I look back on it and I'm like, the amount of FaceTime that I got with the writers on that show and with Jon Stewart and with the correspondents when I was a PA really boggles my mind. Like it really, I felt like I was a part of that family very early from working there. And so it was slightly different than, I'm sure there are shows where the PA, like the writers don't know their names. Like they're just someone who runs and gets stuff. But I felt like everyone there kind of knew me and was aware of what I wanted to do with my life and was looking out for me. It was a really wonderful place to be. Like I really lucked out. That's why it's stupid for me to be like, if only I could have been doing these like black box theater shows because I was in a place that really took care of me.
Sure. But that it's not that like, yeah, you felt like you were included. It wasn't just that you were low down in the hierarchy, but the person on stage at, where was this, Pitt, Magnet, like what?
It was probably, I mean, all those places, Pitt, Magnet, and then the theater I was at most of the time was called Juvie Hall, okay, which was one of those places that burns brightly and then burns out quickly because it was more about, it was not a place that was set up to become like a self-sustaining institution that goes on for a while. It was really just my friend Eric Marzazak wanted to run a comedy theater and did, and it was just like a real set group of people did shows there for the most part. But anyway, so but I would go see other people's shows there and I'd be like, oh, this is the kind of stuff I should be doing. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So there is some ego involved in, hey, I'm on stage. That's my laugh.
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
All the jokes I've never been on. I've been, when I worked on the Pete Holmes show, I was in a sketch or two or something like that. It's just a person that was there. They needed a human body. And
you were the closest thing they could get, yeah.
Closest. It was like, he'll do. I think his DNA is like 98% human.
It's like we don't have time to run the whole sequence.
They had to swab. Yeah, it's like we can't do the whole swab right now. We gotta. but like, other people got my jokes. The things that I wrote that made it through the threshing machine of the writing process that got onto TV, or even just like, I pitched a joke to Naomi for St. Dennis and that made it through, and Naomi, like we were watching the episode, Naomi's like, hey, that's your joke. And I go, doesn't matter. My name's not attached to it. It's like, I'm glad you like the joke enough to like throw it in your script. But like, that's like, it doesn't have the same feeling as you being on stage. There's an amount of this where it's ego, I think, I'm speaking for myself, but I feel like there is some kind
certainly. It certainly is. Yeah.
I feel like consonance between us, where I'm just where maybe I can suggest that for you.
No, I think so. Well, anyway, I think you're right. I think there's a certain amount of ego aspect of it, and also, I don't know if this is anything. You were asking about like what draws someone into what we do, basically.
You specifically.
Yeah, well, me specifically, what drives me into it, and I think there's a certain amount of when you are on stage. Also, you are deciding how the interaction between you and another person is going to happen. Between you and the audience, there's a very clear understanding of you're there and I'm here. You're paying attention to me. I'm going to say this. This is the kind of reaction I want out of you. And hopefully you'll give me that reaction. And those rules are very clear. And it's like, I am very impressed sometimes by like people who break the form and they bring the audience into their show or whatever, but it's not the way I think because it's not how I'm comfortable, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a certain amount of it that is someone who grew up having a lot of difficulty parsing the normal rules of human interaction when I was young and being like, well, this is a way to control that. Like, it's all very the same way that like, if I meet someone who I'm a fan of, someone whose work really means something to me. And I'm thinking in particular, there's a cartoonist who I have since become a little friendly with, but when I first met them, I was a huge fan of theirs, but I didn't know them. And I was introduced to them at a party, and I was like, oh, hey, I love your stuff. And he was like, yeah, hey. And I was like, oh, if this was like a convention or something like that, or a book signing, I would feel so much more comfortable because it would be so clear. It's like, he's a creator of things. I'm a fan. I walk up. This is the interaction we have, and then it's over. This is a party, and I'm being introduced by a mutual friend. And I'm not being introduced as, oh, this is a fan who's going to have a short interaction with you, and then it'll be done. I'm being introduced as, this is potentially someone who you might get stuck in a conversation with, and I'm already in a conversation. I don't want to be in a conversation with you. And it was just like, ugh, this is so messy. Like, it's so sloppy, you know? And so I think that was probably part of it too. But I grew up kind of like, as you mentioned, in Millburn, New Jersey, home of the Paper Mill Playhouse, one of America's great regional theaters.
I thought you were going to say a mascot. Home of the Paper Mill Mills.
No, I mean, it is my high school is home of the Millburn Millers, although the mascot is a bear. Millburn is called that because there was a paper mill there for many years. It eventually it burned down, and I think there was a second mill, and that became the first home of the Paper Mill Playhouse, unless it was the mill became the Paper Mill Playhouse and then burned down, and they built the current theater. I don't remember, but Millburn is known for two things: the Paper Mill Playhouse and the mall at Short Hills, which is one of America's great regional luxury malls. You know.
I know the commercial.
Yeah, the commercial. So your dreams are attainable at the mall at Short Hills, and a mall I worked at for a period. And
where? The Swatch watch store?
No, I worked at the Suncoast Motion Picture Company video sales store, and so that's where I worked when I was a freshman at college. And I came back home, and it was one of I was in retail, different jobs for a little bit, and but I worked there. I worked at a Barnes Noble in Chelsea, in New York. I was reading a biography. I was just on vacation with my family. I went on the first vacation that I've had where I brought no work with me in years. My wife made me promise I'd bring no work with me, but I did bring a bunch of books to read. It was great, and I read this biography of John Singer Sargent. And at one point, they talked about him being at a place at 23rd Street and 6th Avenue, and I put the book down. And I go, look at this. John Singer Sargent was at a place only a block away from the Barnes Noble I worked at. And she was not impressed by that. But but I was always drawn to comedy and performance, but I had a lot of stage fright. I had huge stage fright and was always nervous about that. I wanted attention, but I kind of didn't want to mess up, and I was always afraid of messing up.
Elliott, sorry, can I just break it for a second? Because literally, like, everything you've described, it hits home in my heart in a very deep way. A fear of gray areas.
Yeah.
Not wanting to mess up, which is why I would always make jokes from the back of the classroom. So even if a joke bombed, then I'm in the back and there's no one behind me.
Do you have a physical pose that you do when you're pitching a joke or an idea? Because I know what mine is. If I'm not feeling confident, I know that I put my hand behind my head, one hand behind my head like that, and lean back a little bit as if I'm being falsely casual, like, hey, this doesn't bother me if you don't like it, because I'm just a casual, cool dude. I'm relaxed,
Huh. I It's probably this where I twirl my sideburn hair.
Okay.
I think that's probably it for me.
That could be it. Yeah, that's a very Jewish way to do it. Yeah.
Twirl my payos.
Just twirl your payos around your finger coyly.
Braiding my payos
in a seductive Hasidic way.
Yeah.
But I think but I was always drawn to comedy and especially like to stand up more than anything else. And I think if I had really had the drive to do it, I could have been a pretty good stand up. And I did stand up, but I just didn't want it badly enough to, partly also because I had a job already working at a TV show, even though I was a PA, but like to like hang out at comedy clubs till late at night in the hope that I would get time. Like I just didn't want it badly enough. And I know people who wanted it badly enough, and some people made it as stand-ups and some didn't, but they all stuck with it longer than I did. Mm-hmm. And
your friend Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, my friends Eddie Murphy and Robin Williams. They really, my friend Jack Benny, This
was Jack Benny. Was he even alive when you were?
No, he died in the 1970s.
Yeah,
I think, or the late 70s, or maybe the early 80s. I mean, I think he was dead by then. But it's like this is what I goes. Me and my friend Julius Marx. You would know him as Groucho, But I really loved that stuff, and at a certain point, it became a very overt kind of like escape from depression. Like a way to kind of keep
depression, like clinical,
depression, yeah,
or
I mean, I've never been hospitalized for it, but there's always a little voice at the back of my head telling me there's an exit I can take, so but certainly like I would say, close enough to clinical depression. I don't want to put on airs or anything. I don't want to have a stolen valor type situation, but
yet someone demanded to see your Lexapro prescription.
Exactly. Well, that's the other thing is I really need to, my current job, which I'm lucky to have, is,
by the way, the knee-jerk response anyone I talk to
who is working
right now. Like a friend of mine was up for two different cartoons, different and this is Animation Guild, right? So like it's not even like there's a lot of fucked up shit with the Animation Guild, but he was up for two, and he it was like I'm doing some stuff. I'm like, you're my friend. It's okay. You can tell me the things you're doing. You don't have to like hide it or apologize. Like I'm not,
but it feels like we're in that world right now because work is hard to get. But it meant that I haven't been able to do therapy for a while because the job has been taking up so much time. And I would really love to get a prescription for something. And I was out with some of the other writers, and we're like having lunch during a work day. We're not out anywhere, but we were having lunch.
Jones on Third.
No, we were in the same conference room that we were working in, eating the food we brought from home, people were talking about like what they're on right now, like what their anxiety or whatever medication. And I'm like, they're like, Elliott, what are you taking? And I'm like, nothing. I haven't taken anything in so many years. I've been experiencing reality raw for decades now. And I gotta figure out some way to set up some kind of scrim between me and reality, But humor was very much, I mean, I don't like the stereotype of like the sad clown who's like, I have to laugh or else I'll cry. My work comes from my depression, because that's not where my work comes from. But certainly when I was young, comedy was like a way to keep myself from getting too unhappy or too depressed. And it's funny because I feel like there's so many interviews with comedy people, like on WTF and stuff, where they're like, growing up, I didn't even know that was a job you could have. I didn't know you could do comedy.
Yeah, that's me.
But when I was a kid, I was like, I know this is something people do for a living. I know people write it. Like I just
how did you figure it out? Like, what was it? Just like you watched because like I've talked to so many people on here where
you see the credits at the end of TV shows. It says,
but I was too dumb. This is when you said earlier about how like, basically, I forget how you phrased it, but this is how I took it, because this was the same for me. Like that, figuring out like how humans worked, like it just wasn't happening in your head. And for me, it was because I was constantly living in my brain. And so I would miss the lessons I was supposed to learn from real life because I was playing in a little fantasy land up here making up adventures with creatures and
I think
like
there was
that.
I think there was a certain amount of that. Like my family used to call me the absent-minded professor when I was young, stuff like that. But there's also the way I would describe it in that kind of is that when I was a kid, I would play baseball in gym class or something, and I didn't know that you had to tag up. That if you were running from first to second or whatever, and the batter got caught out, you got to run back to first. I would just run to second, and then they would walk over and tag me out, and they'd be like, "You didn't go back to first." And I'd be like, "I don't understand. Why would I have to go back to first?" And nobody explained this to me for years. But it seemed like everybody already knew this rule, but nobody bothered to tell me. And I feel like that was the rules of social interaction for me, or just living, was everyone understands these things already, but no one has bothered to tell them to me, so I don't know them. And so it was just very frustrating. And eventually I matured and became a grown-up adult, and
Sure.
so now I know those things. But
why didn't you know them though? Like, what was going on? Were you just not paying attention?
I just probably didn't care enough to pay attention.
Yeah. Well, no, okay, so that's different.
I think I did, and also I probably never was like watching a baseball game and then said to my dad, "Well, why didn't he just run to second?" "Oh, son, well that's because blah blah blah." Like I probably was too busy thinking about like robots or whatever, or Ninja Turtles, something like that.
Oh, of course, because I could have Baxter Stockman fight Donatello whenever I want in my brain.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have to wait for the cartoon to come on.
No, you don't have to pay Eastman and Laird for the rights to think about it.
I certainly don't have to pay Eastman and Laird.
I mean, now you don't because they don't own it anymore. They sold it to Nickelodeon, but still. Although, does Nickelodeon still own it? Does Nickelodeon still exist?
Let me look up. What percentage does Mirage Studios have?
Well, Mirage is just I don't think they own any of it anymore. So yeah, look it up. When I was a kid, I must have it still somewhere because my mom does throw stuff out. But I wrote a letter to Mirage being like, "Here's a character. Do you want to buy it from me?" And they sent, and they sent me a letter back, and they were like, "No, but keep trying." And there was a drawing in it. And I don't know who drew the picture, but it would have been Jim Lawson at that point in the Turtles history. But it was probably just somebody there in the office. Not that there's that many people at the Mirage office, I guess. But even as a young person, and maybe it's because I didn't have family in the entertainment industry necessarily. Before I was born, my mom worked at ABC in the accounting department, pretty much, and in budgeting. And she left that job to have children. And my dad worked in marketing, but I came from a line of either writers or attempted writers. My dad's mother was a writer who wrote educational supplements for the New York Times that would kind of go to schools. That would be, and she wrote the scripts for film strips and educational film strips and things like that. And my mother's mother was a librarian, and my mother eventually went back and got her library degree, and my wife is a librarian. There was always we were surrounded by books all the time. We were all, my grandmothers and my parents and me were always reading. And so I think the idea that if a thing exists, it was written by somebody, there's a person who wrote it, I think was just early on was something that I picked up and recognized the names of authors that I liked and pursued or followed them and things like that. So I think watching TV, it was well, yeah, of course this is written. It's also, I'm watching a cartoon. I know the Ninja Turtles aren't just making this up as they go along. Somebody's coming up with this stuff. So they don't just turn on the camera and then Donatello and Michelangelo just make with the ad libs, make with the magic.
I don't know. I've heard some of the behind the scenes from the movie, from a Mutant making
Madness,
the cassette,
Mayhem?
from the original. Remember the movie with where for some reason halfway through they go hang out in a farmhouse with April O'Neil?
That's all from the original comics, not for some reason. That's all from the original comics. You got to read the original Mirage.
Wait, hold on. Halfway through in the Eastman and Laird comics, halfway through they go hang out in a farmhouse as if it's a John Sayles film from 1998.
Kind of. So in those original books, which I just reread recently because another podcast, Screw It, we're just going to talk about comics by Kevin and Will Hines. They did a run on Ninja Turtles comics, and I was like, Will, I gotta be in one of these episodes if you're doing the Ninja Turtles comics. And the Ninja Turtles, look, in the first issue, Shredder, they fight him, they kill him. 9-10 issues later, Shredder comes back, beats the crap out of all of them, and they've got to run. And they run to Casey Jones' grandmother's, I think, old farm. And
really?
For a couple of years, they live at that farm and they're too afraid to go back to New York City. And there's a couple years of stories where they're just at this farm in Northampton, I think. And then eventually they have the storyline called Return to New York, where they go back to New York but the farm was a big part of that series. That's why they do that in the movie.
It is, but if you were raised on the cartoon...
Because you think it's some studio executive was like, people love farms. You got to put them on a farm.
There was like,
belong on farms.
All of the like kind of like romantic indie films of the 90s, there was always something. It feels like what was the one there with there's some John Sayles. The reason why that popped in my head, there is some John Sayles film with like David Strathairn and Mary McDonnell where like they end up in the woods running from something.
It's
like
that's not
maybe it's not John Sayles, but like
there's a John Sayles movie called Limbo that ends like that, but with different actors. That's the one where
confusing too.
Where they're like trapped on an island, and at the end of it, oh no, it is David Strathairn. I forgot about that. And Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and like we're at the end of it. They're waiting to see if a plane that's coming back is a rescue plane or is the people who's going to kill them. And the movie ends before the plane gets to them. And I remember seeing that movie as a teenager, and I was like, "Yeah, that's a good way to end that movie because it does. Their character arcs have finished. They've done what they need to do as characters. So like whether they die or not or they get rescued, like they've done it. You know,
Limbo is great because that's one of those early films I saw where the flashpoint for me was really like indie films in the 90s. That was like when I said Hal Hartley, that was like Henry Fool was so important to like shift my brain.
See,
and
Henry Fool's one I only saw I think last year for the first time, and I wish I had seen it when I was younger because I think it didn't work its magic on me the way that it might have when I was younger.
Yeah, it may be something you just have to watch when you're younger, but like, I mean, I still love Hal Hartley, period. But in terms of Henry Fool, that I can't say. But like that kind, like Limbo was, I think if I am thinking of the right film, it starts off kind of as a rom-com.
I think so, yeah.
And then halfway through, it shifts into a thriller.
Into a thriller where they're being stalked on an island by bad guys, by Chris Christopherson. Yeah.
That you could do something like that was like blew my mind.
I mean, if you could still do something like that. Now, I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Because that was like a small movie, you know, it was like a relatively independent movie, but like, maybe you can't even do that kind of stuff as easily anymore. I don't know, you know, what if
but
instead
you could,
well, what if it was Captain America and Wolverine were trapped on that island? You could make that movie now.
Oh, call Kevin Feige and see if Hugh Jackman and Chris Evans are available.
Okay, I'll do it
after Endgame wraps. But like, what I'm trying to say is that's when I started to cotton on to. I knew, just like you, I did know that people had to make the things, but it didn't ever occur to me that I could be one of those people that could make the things. It didn't even occur to me. It just wasn't there. Like the desire to create things was there, and to the point where it pushed lots of other stuff out. But I still didn't think it was a possibility. I think that's the thing that I'm always so fascinated by. Other people who were just like, yeah, I figured out it was a possibility. That's what I'm saying. Like I was just in my head all the time, like playing around.
I wonder if it's an ego thing too. Because maybe it was the ego of me being like, yeah, people make it. I'm going to be one of those people. Like, sure, that's going to happen. I don't know. Because I never really considered an alternate. I mean, except when I was very young and I wanted to be a paleontologist. Otherwise, I never really considered an alternate line of work than to be in some way writing things, you know. Maybe I should have. I don't know. I could be a titan of industry right now. Maybe I'd be a.
Would you want that? But well, would you feel good? This is the thing also.
Well,
right? Part of it is that like it fulfills something in you, I assume.
Most of the time.
Even when I say this, and having done lots of other jobs, the worst writing job I've ever had is a billion times better than the best day job I ever had.
Well, I certainly like the act of writing, like the craft of writing, is still something that I enjoy doing more than most other things. You know, I remember one of the writers who was a big influence on me growing up was Douglas Adams, and I would read whatever I could about him, and he'd be like, "Oh, well, I don't like the old thing of like I don't like writing, but I like having had written." And it's like, well, no, I like the writing part too.
Yeah.
You know, where he would talk about as his deadlines were getting closer, he would take more and more baths to kind of like delay and procrastinate, and so he would get cleaner and cleaner as he was supposed to be working. Where I'm the opposite, where it's like if I'm not writing something, a part of my brain is thinking about what I could be writing right now, and which is not good when I'm trying to be present with my family, or enjoying, any sort of sensory experience in the world, because there's part of me that's always thinking about like, oh, I could be writing right now. And it's why I feel very seen by the song Finishing the Hat from Sunday in the Park with George, which is all about, do you know that song? Do you know that play?
I've never seen it.
It's a Sondheim musical about George Seurat, and it's a kind of a bumpy, like the play has amazing moments, and then some parts where you're like, all right, but this song, the big song in it is the song Finishing the Hat, where Seurat he's working on the sketches for Sunday and the Grand Island, the Grand Shot, whatever the famous painting is.
The famous pointillism one.
The famous pointless painting. And he's singing about how there's always part of him that will never be able to commit fully to the woman that he loves, because there's always part of him that, in order to imitate reality in the form of art, has to stand back and look at reality. And it means that when he could be experiencing it, he instead has to either be working or he has to be observing so that he can do the work. And he talks about like painting a face. He's something about painting a face, stepping back to look at a face leaves a space like a window. And it's like every time I hear that song, I cry, because it's like, it's so right. In order to comment, you have to remove yourself from it, as opposed to I guess maybe what the Hemingway way of writing, where you're like, then I went out and I shot an elephant so I could write about shooting an elephant or something,
You couldn't imagine that, buddy? No.
There's the Mr. Show sketch about the Hemingway writer.
Yes.
It's like the length, you felt it in the long length of hair at the tip of your penis, and they're like, what? Like, all his descriptions of his own body are so strange.
Two things. One, I imagine that song, even though I know what the kind of song Sondheim writes, what I imagined was like a kind of Cockney accent type song from like Mary like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins was what I was imagining.
Married in the morning, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh wait, I'm painting a painting with little dots. That was one. Yeah. Number two,
highly inaccurate. I will say there's a bit I've always wanted to produce, and I have not found the time to do it, because I don't know what form to do it in, that anyone will ever see it, which was, I wrote a parody of that song called Finishing the Hut, which is George Lucas singing about why no one understands why he needs to keep adding stuff to Star Wars. And I wanted to find someone who could sing it like Mandy Patinkin and then like produce the music of it. And I just never got around to it, but maybe someday I'll do that. But anyway.
Just call up Mandy Patinkin.
Okay, I'll see. Yeah, maybe he's available.
Yeah, why not? I think is the show he was on FX. It only got one season, so I'm sure he's free.
I don't know that show.
It was a mystery show. I forget the name.
Oh, the Mandy Mysteries?
Yeah, the Mandy Mysteries. Actually, Elliott. That's a good idea.
That'd be good. He plays himself.
Yeah.
Or it's the movie Mandy, but it's Mandy Patinkin as Mandy, the wife of Nicolas Cage's character. All right, it could happen. Yeah, Mandy Patinkin gets kidnapped by a cult. Nicolas Cage has to save her. Or Mandy Patinkin.
Mandy Patinkin is playing Amanda Seyfried. Mandy Seyfried.
Okay, keep talking. Yes.
And
where they merge together, they're in a fly type teleportation booth.
Or like that Together film with
I still haven't seen it yet. Alison I really Brie. Want to. Yeah, I heard it's really good.
Alison Brie and her husband, whatever his name is. So
Harvey Brie.
Yeah, Harvey Brie.
Yeah.
So wait, there was the separating yourself from yes, but that's the thing, is that I assume your brain, and I feel like our brains are very similar, but like it's constantly in this state. It's like a Schrodinger type kind of thing, where you're
There's
in
always
the moment.
There's a dead cat in it. Yeah,
there's a dead cat somewhere in your brain.
No, but you're always where you're in the moment, but you're thinking about what you could do with it.
Yes,
or what you're going to be working on.
And those moments, I think that's why I do like. I mean, I'm not on stage very much anymore at this point, but like what I did like about that, or what I like about playing basketball or something like that, is I'm forced to be in the moment in a way that I am usually not. Or just even like having like, I will say this, when I'm like engaged in like a good conversation with Naomi or something like that, right there I am in the moment for once, and I'm not thinking of a joke Although I'm thinking of a joke, honestly.
Well, that's the thing.
So.
In conversation, I'm always thinking of, but that's at least my main podcast, The Flophouse, that I've been doing for almost 20 years now. When we do our live shows, and I was just listening to the audio that we released of a recent live show that we did in Chicago.
K9.
That's how, K9, exactly. That's what I was listening to. Thank you. That's the one, that's how I feel in those shows, where my head is entirely engaged in trying to be in that moment and think of funny things to say in that moment. And those are the most fun because it's like the flow is there and our audiences are so, forgiving of whatever dumb stuff I'm saying there. And especially those Chicago shows, the audience was hot. Like there were jokes that they shouldn't have liked. They laughed at because they were just eager for it. But but in those moments, yeah, definitely I'm not thinking about kind of like other stuff. I'm only thinking about what am I doing in this moment? And it makes me wish that I had pursued certain types of performing that I think I was too, and I went to NYU for dramatic writing and we had to take one acting class and I was so kind of like in my own head and in my own discomfort that I couldn't do the thing you have to do in acting class, which is not worry that you look like an idiot while you're doing things. And I just couldn't do that. And I feel like now I could maybe do that, if only because I have so much experience looking dumb on purpose to make my kids annoyed, like doing things to annoy them. And so we were just in this, so we were just on vacation. We were in Maui and I had to make a video for this Flop TV online show that by the time this episode comes out will probably have happened already. It was on January 3rd, but it was my turn to make a video for it. And I'm like, I'm going to make a video where I'm trying to it's for the movie Dr. Dolittle, the old Rex Harrison one. I know there are birds that talk at this hotel, but I'm going to walk around and I'm going to try to get them to talk to me and I'm going to fail every single time. I know this. And the video will be about me saying, I'm going to find this talking bird. I'm going to talk to it. And then failing as I go. And I had to wear my usual kind of like the outfit I wear for these videos, which is like a button down white shirt with a tie and jeans.
Matthew Lesko type with question marks.
That'd be amazing.
Was that Riddler? Were they the same?
Matthew Lesko also had question marks. People think that he had dollar signs, but he had question marks. And, what a man ahead of his time. He knew the government was just giving away money. It was full of fraud, waste, and abuse, you know. He was like a populist doge. He was like, take that money. Anyway, and I think a lot of the programs that he said people get money from, they actually couldn't. It was not good advice. But
it's like, just go to the Federal Reserve and grab a gold bar.
Yeah, but basically I had to run around the grounds of this hotel with my younger son, who agreed to be the cameraman, just recording it on a phone, with me going up to birds and being like, "Hello, sir. Would you like to talk to me? Hello? Hello, sir? Hello?" Or like if I saw a duck across a pond, yelling at it, going, "Do you want to talk to me? Hello? Do you want to talk to me, bird?" And it was the kind of thing that when I was younger, I would have felt very self-conscious about doing it because I was in a busy hotel. There were people all over the place, you know, and instead it felt, if anything, more fun to be doing this now in front of a bunch of people who had no idea what I was doing, because it was like, it's clear that like when I was younger, I would have been like, people are going to think that I'm like a crazy person doing this. But instead, what I was doing was so stupid that it was like, obviously I'm doing some kind of bit or something. And we now live in a world where you expect half the people around you to be making videos for online stuff anyway. So it was like, and it meant that I could kind of like road test some of the stuff to see if the people who were just bystanders would laugh at any of it. So it was like, oh, this is great. Whereas when I was younger, I would have felt very self-conscious about it. And that's what made it hard to get to performing.
Like, what was going on? What is it, vanity? Because it was part vanity for me. I think it was all vanity for me.
I think it's part vanity, but also just like growing up and feeling more comfortable as myself. You know, feeling less, and I think realizing at a certain point, well, like I've been bullied. People who don't like me have been very clear about how much they don't like me. So what else is going to happen? Like, what's the word? But also at the same time, people who do like me have been very clear about how much they do like me. So why am I as bothered about the people who don't like me? That being said, I stumble on a bunch of bad message board where people talk about how much they don't like my current run on Harley Quinn, the comic book that I'm writing, and that sent me for a loop where I was like, "Oh boy, well that's that's I shouldn't have read that." But but I think I think some of it is vanity and some of it is like, especially once you're a dad, you know you're not cool, and so it doesn't matter anymore. So you're not as worried about looking like a fool because at the very least, if you're embarrassing anyone, it's your children, and it's fun to embarrass them. So maybe that all goes together to where I felt much more comfortable running around looking like an idiot, yelling at birds, while my younger son recorded it on a camera and then recorded it on a phone.
When you were a kid, though, did you have a good group of friends you guys could like goof around with?
No.
Was it? Oh.
So that's also part of it.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then what was like going on? Was it just bullies and just like having to deal with them, or what?
I had friends, but I didn't have I always wanted that gang of friends that you really trust and you spend all your time with. And I just never really had that. And I was much more of a loner as a kid than I wanted to be. And I really envied the kind of friendships that it seemed like the girls I knew had, where it was like, you have one or two friends who are your friends forever and you share everything with them and you feel very comfortable being vulnerable with them. And, it's just not and I didn't have, but I didn't feel comfortable at the time with the kind of like friendship that guys have where they're basically being mean to each other all the time and like insulting each other all the time. And now that I'm a comedy professional, I feel very comfortable in those situations. But I think when I was younger, it was harder for me to it was like, so the people who don't like me are being mean to me all the time. And then I got to hang around friends that are mean to me, like even in a joking way. Like that doesn't sound good to me. So, and just not finding I was just thinking about this the other day that it was like, it just kind of occurred to me, and it's probably something I should have known a long time ago. Like, with the school I was in was not enormous. It wasn't tiny, but it wasn't enormous. And if I didn't find the friend group that I really wanted, then that is not a judgment on me. It's more that just didn't line up. Like the people I would happen to be friends with weren't here. Because when I got to college, that's when I found those friends. And I had those friends that I felt very comfortable with and had, and are still friendly with. And then once I got to The Daily Show, it was even more so, where some of the people that I'll know for the rest of my life, like I met working there, and still feeling incredibly close to. And so it was like, as I got older, I found I was putting myself in situations maybe where it's more likely I would find those people. That going to a public school in New Jersey, I was less likely to find my group of people than going to a writing program at NYU and then working at a television comedy show about politics, where it's like, well, these are all interests I already have, and I often wonder, I have a couple of sliding doors decisions. And one of them was, I was leaving college and I had a choice between two PA jobs. I could be a PA at The Daily Show, where I'd been interning and which shot in New York, or I could be a PA on Monk, which had its offices in Summit, New Jersey, which meant I would probably be living at my mom's house. And it was, the job was much more of a what you think of as a gopher kind of PA job. It was a small office there. It was just the writing office, because I think they shot it in either LA or Vancouver or something. But there's part of me that's always like, if I had taken that Monk job, I wonder, what would I be doing now? What kind of show would I be working on right now? Maybe I'd have sold a procedural, and, I'd be in season 8 of that, because I have an idea for a procedural, but I have no experience with that. And I don't think it would work very well as a procedural. But I always wonder about that. Would the people there have been the same kind of, would I have had the same experience there that I had at The Daily Show, where it was like, oh, well, this feels like I'm a member of this family. And the people here really care about me and they're really supporting me. I don't know. Not that the people at Monk would have been not nice, but I don't know if I would have had the same kind of mentors and people guiding me and protecting me and looking out for me. I don't know.
You could have been friends with Tom Sharpling.
That's the one thing that I can think, that's the one difference that I can pinpoint is, I have so many friends in common with Tom Sharpling. I've never met him. And I'm like, well, if I worked at Monk, I would know Tom Sharpling. But instead, I live in this world where I've never met him, but I know a dozen people that know him. And so I'm like, there's some alternate universe somewhere where I know Tom Sharpling, where there's an Elliott who has worked with Tom Sharpling. That's the main difference I know that exists. And also Hitler won the war. That's the other thing. Hitler won the war, and I'm friends with Tom Sharpling. Yeah.
I think you sacrificed your friendship with Tom Sharpling so that Hitler could be defeated.
If that's the spin we want to put on it, then I'll do that. Yeah.
And
there was some time travel involved.
No Nazis are back in 2025, so everything worked out well.
Oh, well, that's the problem, is that what that means is that I'll probably become friends with Tom Sharpling at some point. That the you can only change reality for so long, and then the pattern reasserts itself. So we'll get back to that world.
I've heard that about time.
Maybe that's the spec screenplay I should work on, is one where I worked at Monk and I go back in time. Me and Tom Sharpling go back in time, and then we realize to defeat Hitler we have to sacrifice our friendship.
It's not a bad idea. Whether you want to spend... That's the thing that I've learned, is that I have like I don't know, like 5 documents worth of ideas, and then it's just like, well, which one do you actually want to spend your time?
Well, that's the hard thing, because many of the ones that I've spent the time working on have not panned out. But that's just the way. That's the nature of the business.
All of the things I've done have not worked out. I've made a living selling things that never get greenlit. So, which is again better than I remember an interview with someone. This is like before I even wanted to do any of this, or knew that I wanted to do any of this. I remember I forget who it was, but it was on I don't know what it was, because it was before podcasts. But the interview was like
a stone tablet. Yeah.
It was. So it was. So before podcast, there was only etching into stone tablets.
It was just etchings and stones. Yeah, because this podcast were invented in ancient Rome. That's when Caesar really harnessed the manosphere to take over Rome.
Oh yeah, do you remember when Brutus was selling all those supplements? And
oh yeah, well for a short time, and then that's they're like, Augustus, you're losing support with the public, so you got to go on this idiot's podcast, and he's going to ask you the dumbest questions in the world. People are going to love you for it. But anyway, you were saying before you heard somewhere, it was just
someone talking about how they made a living selling things, and they were like frustrated. I guess at some point, if this is all that it was, maybe I would get frustrated, and certainly I would like one of these things that I sell to become something.
Yeah,
but I'm like, I still get to do, like, I remember what it was like working at a supermarket. It's still in my head what it's like to have to walk at the end of the day and pull all the groceries to the front of the thing called fronting, I think. It's been a long time.
I think they're called shelves.
It's called shelves.
Yeah, when you said the front of the thing, I was like, those are the shelves.
No. I meant like... Sure, the shelves. But I meant like, I forget what they called, like when you pulled it forward at the end of the day. So the next day when the first customers came in, it looked like it was full.
Oh, I didn't even know that people did that. That's a supermarket secrets revealed.
I believe that's the first time I ever spilled that secret. So
yeah, well, that's like the when I worked at Barnes Noble, and I became the golden child for the manager there, and everyone got mad at me because I was the only person. I worked at the information desk. They were like, they had me doing other stuff, and then I was at the information desk, and because I knew. People would come up and ask about books, and I'd know what the book was. They were like, you're only working at the information desk from now on. You actually know the things that we sell in this store. And they were like, someone comes over looking for a book. Look it up on the computer. If we have it, take them to the section, take the book off the shelf, put it in their hand. It's harder for people to put it back on the shelf, and they'll often just buy it. And I was the only person who was doing that. Other people would just kind of point them to the sections, and the manager was like, everyone watch what Elliott's doing. Do it like Elliott. He's taking them to sections and he's putting the books in their hands. But that was the secret there was if you take the book off the shelf and hand it to the customer, it's harder for them to put it back on the shelf, But I think there's maybe it's human nature or maybe it's being a creative person, I don't know. But there definitely is a feeling of like the level you're at, there's another level beyond it that you wish you were like if you're not working, you want to be working. If you're selling stuff that's not getting made, you want to sell stuff that's getting made and you feel disappointed about it. If you're working, but you're working on something that is not meaningful to you and you see other people doing more interesting things, then you're disappointed about it. And I remember listening to a podcast that Paul F. Tompkins was on where he was saying how people would say to him like, oh, congratulations, you've reached this level of success. And he would think, can't they see that I'm not as successful as I want to be? Or as that person over there. And then he would realize that if he's climbing a ladder, he's the one building the extra rungs on the ladder that he then feels like he needs to go up. But I think that's part of it. Where like success in this industry is survival. If you're surviving and you're not, and even if you have to take another job sometimes, that's not a writing. But as long as you're paying your bills, you're success. And if you're able to save a little bit of money, that's a big success. But even being at that level of success, there's still the part of me that's like sees someone doing great work and is like, ugh. If only I could be doing that. And I think the thing that I need to, this is going to be the struggle of my life until I die, is to kind of be like comfortable with my own mediocrity, that I am not, a great artist, and I'm probably not going to create great art, and I don't know that I'm capable of great art, but I'm capable of well-crafted things, and I'll have to own up to that there's probably not going to be no one's going to be like studying my work at some point in the future, and I have to let go of the idea that my work should live on after I die, because I'm not going to know about it. It's not going to bother me, but that's going to be like the ego struggle of my life, is to be like, you know what? If I am just one of the many television writers whose work just happened and he was able to make a living and support his family, and he's not remembered except by his coworkers or whatever, or his colleagues, and then they die and no one remembers any of them, that's fine, because eventually none of us are going to be remembered by anybody anyway, just by the nature of the passage of time. But
ask a 20-year-old who Sid Caesar is. I make jokes on
they would think
podcasts all the time.
They would think he's from ancient Rome. Yeah.
You remember when Sid Caesar got stabbed by
he made the funniest
Carl
face.
Reiner?
Yeah. Carl Reiner. Now I really wish they never did that, did they? Like I don't think they ever did a Julius Caesar sketch on your show of shows or Caesar's Hours or something. Or Caesar's Hour. They should have done that where he's playing, he's Julius Caesar and Carl Reiner is Brutus, and like Howie Morris is like Cinna the poet or something like that. Like that would have been great. Yeah. They should have done that.
I'll make jokes like that all the time. No one knows what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I barely know what I'm talking about. It's only because I watched like Looney Tunes and Tiny Toons, and they made reference to that stuff when I was a kid. And then I happened to actually go and look at, who is Steve Allen, and kind of like read up on this stuff because it was of interest to me. But no, that's the thing I've come to in the last, 10, 15 years. Like, no one knows who the fuck Albert Einstein is.
I think that's where I think you're different. This is something I've been trying to do for the past few weeks, is trying to think of what's a name from the 20th century that's going to last. The same way that we were mentioning them, Julius Caesar. Even if you don't know anything about him, you know the name Julius Caesar. Michelangelo or Shakespeare. You might know that Michelangelo, you might not know. Shakespeare, his name will last at least another couple hundred years. Even if you've never seen or read any of his plays, you have a general sense who Shakespeare was. I think Einstein is the one name from the 20th century. Einstein and Hitler, maybe. I think are maybe the only names from the 20th century that will probably going to last for hundreds of years. Einstein, they won't even know what he did, but they'll just be like,
but
that means smart guy.
That's my point.
That means smart scientist. And Hitler, they'll know that means bad guy,
Well, let's see what happens in the next couple of years if that sticks. But like,
this is a phase. This is a passing phase.
You're more optimistic
it's a terrible
than I am.
passing phase.
You're more optimistic than I am. But they don't know what. This is the point of legacy. The point of legacy is the idea that like, oh well, the work will carry on and people will be influenced by it. I don't think anyone knows what EM equals MC square even fucking means. Let alone Brownian motion. Let alone like. Special relativity.
But we live in the world that is, even if you don't know that stuff, you live in the world that was created by it, right? So it's like, if you ever did this when you were in school, when you were bored, you start drawing like circles around each other and you make like a little weird wobble in one of them. Yeah. And so when you draw the next one, you have to accommodate for that wobble. Yeah. And by the time you fill up the whole page, it's just some kind of weird shape. Like the shapes at the end don't know the wobbles at the early part that caused it, but they're living in the world that results from that work or from that moment. And if you dug deep, you can pinpoint, oh, this happened because of that. Like if you do the research, do your own research, everybody. Don't listen to what the FDA tells you. Do your own research.
And by that, you mean actually do your actual, like do a study and do a double-blind test.
Do a double-blind test. You need placebos and you need the actual drug. You need to have at least 2 separate groups. Maybe 4 separate groups is better. So do that research. It would help if you have clean lab facilities.
Yeah. It's got to be repeatable, the scientific test.
We do live in a world where if you were curious about, well, why is this thing like this thing? You can find out about it. If you're like, I'm E equals MC squared. What does that even mean? And you look it up and you're like, oh, okay. Now I know what it means. And I wouldn't confuse lack of curiosity in whatever the modern generation is about the past with a lack of there being that legacy, because at least there's it can be discovered if it needs to be discovered, and regardless of that, we're living in the world beyond it also. It's like it's like the better version of the Imitation Game that I wish I could have written that I think was better than the movie that got made. Where this is the way I would have pitched that movie, is because the way they did it, it's like,
is that Eddie Redmayne?
That's the one where Benedict Cumberbatch is Alan Turing, right? Where it's like this cop is investigating Alan Turing, a break in his house, and he discovers Alan Turing is gay, and Alan Turing gets arrested. And then the whole rest of the movie is the mystery of like, what were you doing during the war? And he can't tell them because it was the secret code breaking thing. And then he's found guilty of being gay, and they force him to undergo chemical castration. It's terrible. And then that's it. And there's that part at the end where it's like, his crypto machines are still in use today. We call them computers. And it was like, great. But the way I would have done that movie is, no one's asking me, and it'll never get made, and no one cares, and that movie won Academy Award, I think, for screenwriting too, so it doesn't really matter. And it was a big success, is you'd have that same, I would follow that police officer more, and I would say, he's arrest this guy, he's gonna get this guy for being gay. He's gonna get him. He thinks it's disgusting. And the more he looks into this guy's record, the more he's finding things don't add up. And so he nails him. He nails him on this thing. He ruins his life. And then he investigates further and he finds out, oh, this guy was a war hero. This guy did this weird machine stuff. And then you'd go into the future. That police officer is now an old man, and he's living in the world created by the work that this guy who he screwed over, who he destroyed, that his work created. And just, you would end with the kind of the remorse that he feels about that he had no idea what he was doing. And he was so slavishly following what he thought were the rules of his time that he was destroying the man who was building the future that his children and his grandchildren were going to live in. And it would have, I just think it would have been more interesting. But instead, that might have been but instead they were more focused on just establishing the most basic possible facts about this person, because most people didn't know anything about him. But I remember it was like, it's kind of introduced with this character kind of like learning about his past, and I don't think he really does anything with it. Like, I don't think it doesn't, that character doesn't exist as a character, He's just a way to have like a cold open, But
can I pitch though, the cop in your version, at the very end, you see him, he pulls a gun out of a drawer, and then it cuts to a wide shot of his house, and you just hear a bang, and then cuts to credits. And then
oh, I don't want to end it that way.
A Green Day song plays or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and then I Hope You Had the Time of Your Life plays. Or that Fork in the Road song. Yeah.
So that's.
And then it says at the end, we still use these machines today. They're called computers, but we've already seen it happen in the movie. And then it becomes about the discovery of gunpowder among the Chinese.
Wait,
many centuries ago.
We've gone long. I just one last question.
Oh, sure. We barely talked about my beginnings.
You'll
but
have
that's
to come
okay.
back. Okay, it'll be a third time in another 5 years. You'll have to, because the first time was back when the show was just about like, how did you get into the business?
Yeah.
And then,
I was on the show a long time ago, and it was you hadn't yet, I think, found your true love of digging deep to someone's core, to someone's emotional and philosophical core, that I feel like has become the kind of hallmark of the show, where you're like, I'm going to find out, I'm going to go as far into your how you think and why you think as possible. I feel like that's the kind of stuff you do, which is one of the reasons I like this show so much. Like, I really love listening to it. And there are many times where I'll listen to it and I'll be like, I don't know who this person is that Andy's talking to, but I'm going to listen to it. And I find it fascinating. And I think there's something very insightful, which is why I think you are just not cut out to be a talk show host, unfortunately, because you can't keep the conversations at the shallowest, most surface, glossy level. So you had a funny story in your safari recently, didn't you? Yeah, I did. Anyway, okay, well, you got your...
Wait, why did you go on a safari, by the way? And why are you wearing a pith helmet like it's 1948? Those are the incisive questions that I would ask.
You would ask those. So you would dig deep. Instead of saying, that's a hilarious story. Anyway... Murders in the Rue Dork opens this weekend. Did you
say Rue Dork?
Yeah, it's a comedy. It's kind of like a dude bro comedy.
Like not another teen movie, except about Edgar Allan Poe.
Exactly, it's all jokes about Edgar Allan Poe stuff. Yeah,
these are good ideas. Keep this in your back pocket. That's a good idea.
Oh, that's it. I mean, there's so many. I'm constantly coming up with good ideas that nobody would like or buy.
Or that you would actually like past the joke.
No, it's one of those. They're like, it's so. And there's also the part of me, and I wonder if this happens to you, where I'm like, ugh, that's been done before. I can't do that idea. And then I always have to tell myself, no, it doesn't matter. One, nobody knows the version of it that you say has been done before. Two, even if they did, nobody cares. You know, in there, if I'm like, oh, it's all the characters from Edgar Allan Poe stories. Oh, that's basically just League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Okay, never mind. I can't do that. I'm like, nobody cares. Nobody, it doesn't matter.
I essentially sold Breathless 10 times over. No one's paying attention to
the movie where Gene Seberg is buried alive in a coffin and she has to get out.
Yeah. You mean the last season of Bosch? Was that the last?
Was that? I didn't.
His daughter. There was some Bosch season where his daughter gets buried in the.
Once I found out that Bosch was not the story of Hieronymus Bosch, I was not interested in watching it.
It is the story. That's his name, Hieronymus Bosch. He's named after the painter.
I was like, Hieronymus Bosch has to solve crimes while he's painting the Garden of Earthly Delights. This is the show I want to see.
Oh my God! Get Tolliver. What's his name? Tolliver something?
I don't know.
The guy who plays Bosch, who's also in Deadwood.
Oh, right.
Titus Welliver, something like that.
It sounds like it could be a name, sure.
Anyway.
But you had one more question. Like Columbo, you had one more question that was going to finally get me.
Elliott, just one more question. When do you think the desire went from liking to wanting to make?
I mean, almost from the beginning. Really? I don't think it was ever. I mean, I think I'm lucky because it worked out, but I would have been cursed otherwise, that I wanted to be a writer who made things and told stories and made jokes since I was very young. Like, I was the kid where I have a very strong memory of when I was probably 6 or 7, writing a story about these people find a dinosaur alive somewhere and making copies of it. And then at a family event, like handing it out to everybody and being like, here's my story. You got to read it now. The same way that many girls will force their families to watch them put on like dance shows that they have choreographed to popular songs, you know, that was me with stories and stuff. And like, I'm going to put on this little, I wrote a 45-second long play. And I'm going to put it on with these puppets and you're going to watch it now. And so I think it was as far back as I can remember, really, that it was there, you know. And when I was in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher would get mad at me because we were supposed to like write stories and I was always asking for more paper. I was like, I ran out of paper. My story is too long. I need another piece of paper. And she'd be like, stop writing such long stories. You're using up all the paper.
Stop being good at this assignment.
And so it was kind of like, I don't really remember that thing. And it's just kind of always, and I like the idea of going to college and using that time to figure out what you want to do with your life. Like I just didn't have that. Like I kind of went in knowing, well, this is the kind of thing that I want to do, you know? And so I don't know. I was either, it's like Lance Henriksen in Millennium, you know, that's my gift. That's my curse, you know, that I knew, but it's not a curse because it worked because I'm able to do it. And it's something that, so I have a book out now called Joke Farming. I should have mentioned it at the top of the show. Maybe you'll mention it when you.
I'll mention it in the intro.
Okay. This book called Joke Farming that's about writing comedy. And I've worked on it for a few years and it finally came out in November 2025. It's from the University of Chicago Press. It's called Joke Farming, How to Write Comedy, Other Nonsense. And and I talk about it in it about like, it's flabbergasted me that I've been able to support myself, now support a family, writing and mostly writing jokes for years now. Like it feels like I pulled off a heist, or like I tricked the universe into letting me do something stupid that shouldn't happen. That like what do I do with right now? I'm writing on I think it's relatively public knowledge. I'm writing on this Ghostbusters show for Netflix. I'm one of the EPs on that, and I'm writing the Harley Quinn book monthly for DC. And I do my podcast, The Flophouse, and I do another podcast called Clueless. That's part of the Smartless Network. That's like a game show podcast that Andy and Naomi were on recently, talking to the listener. That's why I use your names. And but those are the jobs that I'm doing. And it's like, it's all some kind of comedy writing or performing. Yeah. And I am somehow in this very lucky space where I am well known enough that I have an audience. I am not well known enough that if I get mad at my children and lose my temper with them, anyone will try to record it with their phone. Like they won't recognize me and won't know about it. and I wish I was slightly better known because it might make it easier for me to sell projects, which is not because I find myself going to a lot of meetings where they're like, so tell me about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? But that's just the way of things.
Maybe,
at the same time,
Elliot. I'll tell you about something off.
Okay. Yeah. I'd love to hear it. But I feel very, as much as I can complain about the way this industry works, and stuff like that, and how much work it takes to have this kind of, lifestyle. I mean, like a working lifestyle, to have this, how much work it takes to like keep things going and to make things and stuff like that. It's still, I feel very, very lucky that I'm doing the kind of work that I've always wanted to do,
Yeah,
and
but
I feel like it's,
but it's the part of it that I think is pertinent is the hard work part. Right, because earlier you called yourself lazy, but
I was lazy when I was a kid. Now I work very hard.
No, you said lazy. I believe verbatim you said I was lazy as a kid and I'll always be lazy and nothing will ever stop that.
You're right.
Ever.
Can the stenographer read it back? Yeah, that's exactly what I said. No, but I think, and it shows you what my definition of lazy as a kid is that when I was a kid, I was not already starting to do the things that would help me with this career. I was not already getting involved with semi-professional level comedy. I wasn't finishing any of the novels that I started when I was a kid or any of the plays I started when I was a kid. Like you hear about the kids who are like Steven Spielberg's like, I made these movies when I was a kid and then I became a big filmmaker. And I'm like, well, I would start making movies, but I'd never finish any of them. Like that's my idea of being lazy as a kid.
Spielberg also had a terrible childhood where his mom was cheating on his dad and his dad was, had his own issues and things
distant,
like that. And, yeah, like
I really like that movie a lot. I thought it was really good. And but you're right. It was so funny. It was my good friend Hallie Hagland, who I shared an office with for many years, and who's on the Flophouse a lot. I forget if it was on the Flophouse or somewhere else. We were talking about that movie, and she was doing her impression of it, where she's like, "Son, your mother's dancing sexy. Make sure to take some film footage of your sexy mother."
Yeah, like there's a lot of like, what the fuck kind of. I really want to see. I wanted
she's
to
backlit
see
so you can see through her dress. Yeah. Son, make sure you get this on camera.
I want to see the version of that movie that's just about the parents, because to me, yeah. I'm like, I kind of don't care about. Yeah, I get it. You grow up to be Steven Spielberg, sure, but like the parents, that kind of like where it's like Bergman's like marriage. What's the Bergman film?
Which, the one about his parents? Or, I mean, there's scenes from a marriage.
From a marriage,
that one?
right.
Yeah.
Essentially scenes from a marriage, right? I want to see the scenes from a marriage version of the Fabelmans, where it's just the...
I don't know. Maybe. I could see that. Maybe we could see both of them. Because the thing I do like, what that version would lose, which I do like a lot, two things. I mean, I like that movie a lot. Two things that would miss. One, him making that movie for his school and realizing he does get revenge on that one bully, but that the other bully... It's going to be better for all of them if he makes a movie that makes that guy look like a hero. And when that guy sees that, he makes him uncomfortable because it feels like a lie. It doesn't match up with his image of himself. And that destroys him harder than making him look like a fool would. I really love that. But also, you'll miss David Lynch playing John Ford, which is one of the greatest cameo performances in the history of cinema. I love it so much. And
I still think of that. I think of that scene when I'm taking a picture of my dog. I'm like, okay, the picture's interesting if the dog is up here or down there.
Yeah,
I think of that scene all the time.
What's great is when I was watching that movie with my wife, and it said John Ford on the, and I'm like, oh, when Steven Spielberg was young, John Ford told him never put the horizon in the middle, put it at the top or the bottom. Because I had read interviews where he had told that story, and then to have them do that scene, and I was like, see, I gave you a little spoiler on the scene. What was so great is that you have David Lynch just shouting the words because it's impossible for him to speak at a normal volume. And there was something about that I found so beautiful, and it made me made my heart melt to see David Lynch in that movie, because it was just this reminder of like, I think of Spielberg's movies as being so different from David Lynch's movies, but the two of them are colleagues. David Lynch came up through the AFI. Mm-hmm. Like he lived in Los Angeles. He was very much, he knew those people and was friends with those people. And like when he worked with an actor, it was professionals working together. It was not, Werner Herzog and Klaus Kinski going off into the jungle and almost killing each other. As much as I love their work too, in those things. But like it was like, oh yeah, there's something really sweet about like, there is this film community, at least of that generation, where it's like, you have the guy who makes the biggest blockbuster movies in the world, and you have this guy who makes the most idiosyncratic movies and who has somehow similarly like just been able to make a career and a living from the fact I watched Lost Highway for the first time in many years since I was young, and I didn't really understand it a couple years ago, and I liked it much more seeing it now. And it was one of those things where you read about it and it's like, it was a financial flop, and it's like, financial flop? The fact that this was released in a theater in my hometown when I was a teenager, the fact that when I was a kid I knew what Eraserhead was vaguely because every video store I ever went into had a copy of Eraserhead in it. It's like, it astonishes me that there's a world where David Lynch gets to do what he's doing. And I think that if I was being super pessimistic, I'd be like, that was the old world of filmmaking. It can't happen now. But I think that kind of thing could conceivably happen now. I think there's everything that gets made now, it feels like is either super boilerplate or super weird. And it's just that you don't have movies like Ordinary People that are kind of like in the middle, you know. But it's I don't know, and I guess it's, I guess you owe it all to Mel Brooks that like David Lynch had that career. And so, you know, so that's okay, so that's what I need to do is I need to harness comedy to become successful enough that I can then hire the weirdest filmmaker in America to make a movie so that he can then continue with his weird career in the way that he wants to do it, you know. But anyway, that's my Fablemans bit. That's my routine on it. That's me taking up extra time on the Fablemans. But
that actually seems like a nice place to. I have a lot more questions, but it seems like a nice place to end. It seems like a sincere moment. I had a joke in the back of my head. And I'm just like, what?
All right, that's the difference between you and me. Is I would have said that, and then I would have said the joke anyway. There was someone once on another podcast. They made a fair criticism of me that I was like on a Flophouse episode. I was like, oh well, I was going to tell this joke, but I really think I shouldn't. But anyway, this is what the joke was going to be, and because I can't stop myself from telling it anyway, you know. But it's yeah, I don't know, but that is nice. I think there's at the best version of it. This has been my final wrap-up warm thing. We were talking about very early on, like, there's this, people come in, all they want to do is make money, like, they don't care what they're making, which has always been there have always been people like that in the creative fields, you know, or there's always been, for every great painter, there was the patron who was like, I have this much wall, fill it up, these are the colors I don't like.
And get the fuck out!
Yeah, and it's up to the artist to make something worthwhile with those limitations, you know. Mm-hmm. And if you're a great artist, you can do it. But that there's Hollywood, you know, the entertainment business, it's a business, but that means that it's full of professionals, and those professionals are colleagues. And everyone knows that we're in this very weird middle ground that artists have always been in, where you're like, this is a calling. It's something that I feel like I'm compelled to do something meaningful, but it's also a job, and I've got to do what keeps me alive and supports my family. And I think at the best level in a place like Hollywood, you can find your place among fellow creative professionals who understand that trade-off and are living in that liminal space, you know, between art and commerce, or not even art and commerce, but art and professionalism, you know, art and occupation.
Schrodinger's art, exactly. And everyone like gets it, you know, for the most part. And it's really exciting, like I said, to see Steven Spielberg and David Lynch. It's the only time they collaborated, as far as I know. And it means that, like, yeah, they're all part of the same world. And there's something really beautiful about that. And as much as it sucks that right now it feels like the promise of that is harder to achieve because of the way things are distributed and the way things are funded, going back to Tim Wu and the Master Switch, eventually something's going to come along that topples that, and there's going to be a period of something new. And I truly believe that there will come a time when this is me talking forever. I apologize. This is going to be my wrap up, and it's super long. But like, you look at the history of art, and especially the history of music, popular music in the United States, but also like modern art and things like that. There's this cycle of things becoming increasingly sophisticated until they reach a level where they are super real. And then people saying, this doesn't feel real to me. Even though it's super polished and slick and sophisticated, it doesn't feel authentic to me. And I'm going to go back and look at an older thing or a different thing to find a more authentic way of doing things. And suddenly a new type of art, a new version of it arises. And it's either cubism or punk or the new Hollywood of the late 60s and early 70s. And where it's like, well, I'm going to go back to the older thing, and I'm going to take the core of it
and make it something that speaks to me authentically. And I think that we are passing through the nadir of that type of thing, where, especially with AI, things are going to become more and more realistic. And I think that either the generation after us or the one after that, I hope it's the generation after us, or maybe it's us when we're older, but I don't think so, is going to say, yeah, this stuff looks super real, but like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I want something that means something to me. So I'm going to go back to the older forms, the simpler forms, and I'm going to recreate from that, and I'm going to create something that speaks to me personally. And I think that's inevitable that will happen. And it's inevitable that there'll be some change in the economics or technology that will coincide with that at the right moment, and really amazing things will happen. And I just hope that we still have careers when that's going on, because then we get to take part in it. But if I'm on my deathbed and I look out the window and I see, a billboard or something for something really exciting that a creative person is doing, then I'll be like, oh, okay, good. Well, I saw the pendulum swing the other way. Now I can finally embrace non-existence, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think we may not get to take part in it, but I think it'll happen, and it'll be exciting when it does.
No, I think our brains will be uploaded into the AI cloud, and then we'll also get to participate in Christina Aguilera AI at the Las Vegas Sphere.
No,
which is what's on that billboard that you're looking at.
Way to make it terrible. Way to make it horrible. But you say, okay, but this is my final thing. I was talking about this earlier. You mentioned the Sphere. What was the biggest thing at the Sphere this year? The biggest thing at the Sphere was this weirded up version of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I was gonna. All I could think of the minute you started saying that, all I could think of was like they edited David Zaslav's face onto a munchkin.
Yes, and people are going to that with partly for the novelty of it, but also because the Wizard of Oz is wonderful. Because the Wizard of Oz is a miracle, and there's something about that, and that makes me feel like that makes me excited. Even though they edited it down and they added a bunch of extra space to the framing so it fit the Sphere, and they added David Zaslav's face in it on a munchkin for stupid reasons. It's like a Borgia being like, well, when you paint heaven, make sure my face is on one of the angels, but that you can create a thing. When we talk about like old things, people don't care about them anymore. That movie's almost 100 years old, and it still is so worth it to people that.
Right.
Just the fact that that's the movie they chose for that. It wasn't Harry Potter at the Sphere, it was Wizard of Oz at the Sphere. And maybe it's partly because everyone who made it is dead, so you can screw it with however you want. But the excitement of like, oh, well, that still speaks to people. That's something that's going to last a long time. And when the future generation looks back at the stuff that they want to remake, I think it's going to be or that they want to be inspired by. Not remake, but be inspired by. I think it's going to be stuff like that. Stuff that has that magic to it. So the magic still exists. It's just buried in money right now.
Well, that is a sweet, non-cynical note to end on. I won't push my pessimistic
Don't do
point of
it,
view.
because then I'll just talk some more. Stop me before I talk again, please.
Elliott,
I'm like a werewolf. I'm like, lock me up so I can't keep talking.
Speaking of Oz, of course, the werewolf from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's what you were talking about.
That's a world I don't know anything about.
We could see, this is the thing. Our brains are too similar, so we could just go back and forth, and word sounds like other word, or idea fits in other place because the word is the same and other. So, Elliott, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah,
of course. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.